Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast where I really fumbled that one. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast where we talk everything Lorcana. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jacob.
And I'm leaving that in there because I think it's hilarious.
I think it is
that I
funny.
fumbled over my words that poorly.
Thanks for running on this journey with us.
Did I not even finish it? Oh, I didn't. Gosh, man, I really fumbled that one. I'm leaving it in here. It'll be fun. Hopefully somebody listening gets a laugh out of it. Yeah, today's an exciting one. So we're doing our standard beginning of the set kind of initial thoughts / tier lists. You know, tier lists are always
We didn't do a lot last set.
We did two.
I know.
But that's the thing. They're always front loaded because it's always like, okay, here's all the cool new stuff. Let's rank it all. And then we got into like challenge season and everything was kind of revolving around that.
Yeah, we missed a lot of our traditional stuff because of that, but
I don't think we missed there's a few things that haven't like really worked. Like the card trivia, we only did twice, I think. Mm-hmm. I still really like that one a lot. The art we haven't talked about and like done a specific art episode, which to be fair, there's a lot of stuff to talk about on the art this season. So we might do like a bonus art episode this go around because there is quite a bit to talk about from all the new art kind of thematic stuff that they introduced this one. But anyways, we're doing legendary card tier list. There have been quite a few people that have done this already. And so we kind of stole the template, but we wanted to give everyone our thoughts and feelings on it because it's constantly evolving very rapidly, actually. And if you're looking at the TCG prices of that, you get a pretty quick feel for it because there's some cards that have jumped. There's some cards that people are super hype on, and we're going to talk about it.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, so let's jump into it. As always, everyone, thanks for listening / watching. This does have a video version on YouTube. And actually, last time we did a tier list, I think I actually uploaded the video on Spotify to test it as well. I'll probably do the same this time too. So if you're listening to a podcast audio version and you're not on Spotify, the video version should be on Spotify too. But yes, as I mentioned, TCG player, if you are looking to buy singles for the new set and you're wanting to get anything, if you could use our affiliate link that's linked in the description box below or on our Twitter account at LorcanaPod, then you can use that to buy the singles. Doesn't cost you anything and helps support the podcast. So, and then if you want to email the show, you can do so at lorcanapod@gmail.com. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. I think last week we had a couple built up fan responses on the inbox that we talked about, and I was just so excited because everybody had written in that I kind of just talked about them all. So usually we have a couple backed up that we can talk about, but we don't have that this time. So let's go ahead and jump into card of the week. And this is usually a long one because we sit here and we argue with each other, and and so skipping ahead a couple minutes isn't going to hurt us at all. But card of the week. So we kind of talked about this one beforehand, and so I got it picked out. We're talking about Doc Bold Knight, the 2-cost uninkable steel rare card with a 1/3 stat line and quests for 1. He also has the ability that says when you play this character, you may discard your hand to draw 2 cards.
So I think this is funny, especially like I think you mentioned it before. Is Doc was by far the best dwarf last time. He has the potential to be the best dwarf this time as well.
You're still on the happy train with the 2/1 stat line and has evasive.
During your turn.
Yeah, that can be your card of the week. We'll just make it your card of the week.
Sure, Happy and Doc.
Happy and Doc, because they go together. I also like the thematicness. I mean, that's not a word, but behind the 7 dwarves now is like very strong. You have Amber Steel, which is a proven good pairing, and you have Snow White and 7 dwarves in both of them. We both said we were going to make broom decks last time. Neither one of us did. I'm not going to say I'm going to make a Snow White and the 7 dwarfs deck this time because, to be honest, it's probably not going to happen. But it would be really fun to do. That being said, I think that this is a incredibly good card because while it's 2-cost uninkable, you can play it early, obviously with 2-cost. The uninkability hurts it a little bit, but you can also again, the kind of criteria that I kind of go through in my head. I'm like, okay, are you going to get value from this? Yes or no? And if you're playing it when you don't, when you have a bunch of cards and you don't necessarily aren't going to get the cards from it, then either, you need a bunch of characters on board or you're flooding the board after a whole new world or something. And so I feel like you're getting some value from it. But in most situations, like the next criteria is it a bad top deck? And if you're top decking and you get this, that's a very good top deck because it's low cost. So you're going to be able to afford it. and it's going to draw you 2 more cards because, again, the ability says you may discard your hand to draw 2 cards. So if you don't have any cards in your hand, you can say, I'm discarding my hand and get those 2 cards. And so ideally, you're going to end up plus 2 cards, even if you have 1 card in your hand and it's not necessarily something that you want. Sure, then play it and then get 2 more cards. It's kind of like a, draw a card, discard a card, that you have in some of those other steals. But in this case, you get to draw 2. And so, kind of going through my Amber Steel songs list, I went ahead and threw 2 of these in there because there's not a ton of draw. You've obviously got Rapunzel being the biggest one, and then A Whole New World. But aside from that, the most reliant thing that you're on is having Let the Storm Rage on.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, there was in the set championship deck that I used for the Into the Inklands, I had Surfer Stitch in there as well, which again, that's more, ways late game to draw cards. Without that, I felt like there was just some sort of void that needed to be filled slightly. And I feel like Doc might do that for me. So that's why Doc is my card of the week, because I feel like he's got some potential to be some decent card draw for the Amber Steel songs. You don't have to rely on A Whole New World into decks that you don't want to be, a whole new worlding on, or in situations where you don't want to be using that. And so, yeah, I feel like that's another really strong draw option for you.
And I mean, what's interesting is him automatically being a dwarf, he automatically has a lot of things that can buff him up. So, if he turns out to be a really playable card that sees a lot of play, there's a lot of cards out there that buff him up, So it'd be interesting to see if any of that makes somewhat of a meta turn.
Yeah, I mean, he's got Dreamborn, Ally, Knight, 7 Dwarfs. And so, yeah, I mean, if you are, maybe there's some world where Snow White and the 7 Dwarves is actually the first property deck that ends up being OP. But yeah, I think he's a really good one. I think it's another good draw option for mid to late game. A secondary option to A Whole New World into those situations where you don't necessarily want to be A Whole New Worlding because your opponent's low on resources as well. And then being low cost is obviously, ideal so that you can get them out pretty much at any point in time. So, yeah, that's the card of the week. So moving on to what's on our mind, quick league recap, or any fun matches that we've played. It's still, very early on in the set. We haven't had a ton of chances to play yet, given that, we had the travel times and everything. But I guess the question I have for you, and we've talked about this a little bit, is what fun deck do you see currently that has some potential that hasn't in the past? Meaning, color pairing that, you're interested in that you wouldn't have ever thought twice about in the past.
I mean, I don't know. I think we've talked about it a little bit and seen a lot of little play interest lately, but it's got to be Blurple, right?
I have another one just to keep the conversation spicy, but I think that's what people are considering the most viable one currently. I'm still not convinced long term into the meta it's going to be insane, but as of now, it does have a ton of great tools. Spoiler alert for our top card tier list, but I think Cogs and Elsa might be the top 2 cards in the set. Genuinely, they're it's again. I think that's very meta defining, meaning what else is going on in the meta that's driving decks to be good. But the 1 cost 1/1 Cogsworth that grants any character on board rush, including itself if you want to just rush it in, and then Elsa has evasive rush. And can exert a character when played. You can go tap down anything on an aggro deck and kill it on play, which is very necessary in today's games. And so I think those 2 are insane, and they're 2 massive pieces in the Blurple deck. And then you throw in Tipo and Chicha on the Sapphire side, and you've got ramp and draw for days, and you don't even have to play Hiram anymore, or the items that you're required to play with him, and so that frees up a ton more slots in the deck, and so there's just a ton of potential there.
That's the interesting thing is Blurple doesn't necessarily play items. It can. There's an item variant, but it doesn't need a Tamatoa. It doesn't need a Lucky Dime. It's interesting.
Yeah, and then you throw in some Merlin variants with the new legendary Merlin that we'll get to in a little bit. And you can just run a boatload of 1-ofs, and then you shift on Merlin, and then you find that 1-of that you need, and you're ready to go. And so I think there is a ton of potential. The one that I wanted to highlight would be what I think most people are calling Baja Blast, or the new Blue Fossa. Or no, Baja Blast is green blue. Yeah, I got that wrong. The new Blue Fossa, I guess. So I didn't tell you the story when you got back, but the first week when you were still in Disney, I went and played one of our locals, Devin, who was actually on the podcast a couple episodes ago. Shout out Devin, and he took Blue Fossa, and not only did he take Blue Fossa, he flipped a Fossa off a Fossa. And I'm not talking another Amber Fossa. I'm talking he had 5 ink and sacrificed his Amber Mufasa and pulled off a Mufasa Ruler of Pride Rock, the new Sapphire Legendary off that Mufasa, and GG.
That is... I didn't even thought about that combo.
Because I think he actually had 6 ink. But you play it for free, obviously. And when he played it for free, you have to take back 2 cards. And so he's at 4 ink. But he's technically at 8 ink. Because on turn 5, like, there's not... I mean, granted, I did take him out, and I don't remember, like, the sequencing. He did only get the quest once. And so he only did get one, like, massive turn. But I don't remember the sequencing. I know that there was a Zeus involved. I don't remember everything else that happened. I do remember only got the quest once, but regardless, like, it took every resource I had to take him out. And then at that point, he just had a massive resource advantage and just ran away with it. And so, yeah, it was nutty, to say the least.
I don't know. You've been at a Mufasa like champion. How does it feel like?
I think he's still really busted.
We'll get.
Yeah, I think he's still really busted. I don't think the perfect list with him has been found yet. I'll put it that way. I think you have to build around it because it is uninkable and it is very expensive. And so in order for that to be successful, you can't just kind of shove him into like a current blue steel list and expect it to be good. You have to make some other considerations when doing so. But yeah, we'll talk about that obviously because he's one of the legendaries that we're going to rank. But yeah, I think there was we had a really fun league this first week, getting into the stores to test and getting all the stuff, seeing what everybody else pulled, talking about everybody else's excitement and what they want to run and so forth. So a lot of fun stuff. I think that anything else that's on your mind as we dive into this new meta?
No, I just would like to shout out some people real quick that we met at, that you weren't there for, but we met some Lorcana players at Disney while we were playing around the resorts.
You did mention that to me.
And so they walked up and we let them know that there's a podcast that we make. Shameless plug, so if they're listening, thank you for stopping by.
Appreciate it. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the cool things about this is that, especially at Disney, we get to meet a lot of common interest people like that.
For sure.
But yeah, I think that kind of covers it. Again, this is a really usually a long back and forth. I mean, we're not talking about quite as many cards as we usually do. We do these tier lists, but yeah, legendary tier list. You ready to jump in?
I am, because I'll say this real quick. I think overall, it's pretty strong.
Oh, for sure. This is definitely one of the better legendary pools we've had.
It's really strong, I think. I mean, we'll see how everything plays out, but like, there's a lot of playable ones, and that'll go into our ranking.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, as we jump through this, if you're just listening, we'll go ahead and do a quick recap after we go through a little bit of this and remind everybody what it is. If you're on YouTube or Spotify and you're able to watch, obviously you can follow along with us. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump into it. So I guess let me see if I can make it a little bigger. Okay, so starting off with Amber, and we'll just go down the list. And so starting off with the banger, we've got Naveen, the ukulele player, the 4-cost uninkable 3/3 stat line, in Amber, and he has, I mean, just as far as abilities like in the game in general go, is this one of the top abilities in general?
Yeah.
Whenever you play this card, you may play a 6-cost. Well, first off, he's a singer 6, so 4-cost singer 6. Whenever you play this character, you may play a song 6 that costs 6 or less for free. So you play him for 4, and then you get anywhere up from most likely 3 to 6 additional ink value on that turn because you can play another song for free,
or even a bare necessities if you wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can do just a bare necessities, which in some cases that probably is the right play, but in general, you're most likely like Zeusing or A Whole New World or Grab Your Sword, something along those lines. But I
Real quick, you want to go through the tiers?
Oh, we probably should, yeah, because I kind of stole this tier list this time from a couple other content creators that have used it. But S tier is also considered meta defining. We have A tier or meta relevant, meaning it'll be a strong card in the meta. B tier, niche meta usage, so it can see some play and see some impact, but not a ton. C tier shouldn't play, just don't play the card. And then D tier, hey, at least it's pretty. So probably also shouldn't play it, but at least it's a pretty card. So yeah, thank you. Probably should have started with that, especially because it's a kind of fun one this time.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people are kind of falling off the Naveen train, actually, shockingly. I'm still incredible. I've played a bunch in my testing so far of Steel Song and Sapphire Steel. Every time I pull this card, I'm like, oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking S. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely an S tier. Like in my eyes, if it's falling out of grace with other people, fine. I still don't see a world where this doesn't have the ability to swing the board for you. Because again, and I've done this. Like this actually happened in a few of the matches I've played. So I'm not just like hypothetically like this is a line that could really change the direction of the game. Aerial on 3, find whatever song you want. Especially if you have A Whole New World or find A Whole New World. Usually the next turn would be do whatever else you can, ink, whatever, blah blah blah, play A Whole New World with Aerial, and then good to go. In this sense, with Naveen, it changes dramatically because you can find whatever it is with Aerial, play that with Naveen, or sing it with Aerial, and then play Naveen, and you have the Whole New World. So you're able to do an additional action on top of it, empty your hand further, deal with the board pressure further, and then completely reset your hand to continue ramping. I've just never had a time where I had him / played him and thought, this sucks that I have Naveen.
Yeah.
I mean, there genuinely was not a scenario.
I mean, without that ability on board, like say you didn't get for some reason the on-play ability didn't trigger, right? 3/3 Singer 6 2 lore. That's solid once getting that. I mean, that's really solid once you already got that ability off.
Yeah, I mean, the Singer 6. So, to be fair, I did play him once late game and didn't get the ability because I didn't have a song. I didn't care at that time. I just needed anybody. I just needed a body that quested that wasn't going to die to swords.
He's a solid body.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's definitely in my very good graces still. I have no problem with the card. I think it's fantastic. And I could not be more excited to continue to get to test with this one. It's just like I kind of mentioned with Mufasa, it's a card you build a deck around. Like in my eyes, like it's again and again. I'm going back to kind of the doc, card of the week thought process here. Do you get value when you play it? Absolutely, you get a ton of value. You go from like insane game breaking, game changing value. And I mean like game, like in that specific match you're playing, like you can really shift the momentum of the game playing him. You might get a very little value. You might play a Bare Necessities to your earlier point. Do you get insane value from Bare Necessities? Maybe Bare Necessities whiffs. Who cares? You at least know what their hand is now. You got to play it for free. You have a body on board. You're getting good value from him. It's just, is it a bad top deck? It's not a great top deck, because you might not have a song that you want to play in hand. But again, it's still a body that quests, and next turn, if you do pull A Whole New World, then you're singing it for free. So it checks all my boxes. I love it. I could talk about it forever, but we've got other stuff to talk about. So
all right, let's move on here.
Maribel Madrigal. We got another Madrigal in the Amber family over here, and well, this is a Madrigal. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'll just go through it. It's a tough one. It's a 5-cost inkable. The Family Gatherer, Maribel, 5/5 stat line, quests for 5. So on paper, insanely nutty. However, her ability says, not without my family. You can't play this character unless you have 5 or more characters in play.
Man, like this one, I have like a little extra angst against because it's the set championships cards. Like,
yep.
I don't know. It's disappointing. Excited that we're getting some, and foreshadowing for later too. But like, we're getting some Madrigal legendaries, which is really nice. But no,
I just don't see this as playable. And I'm not just saying that. Like I'll try to back it up. You can't play this on earliest till turn 6. I mean, if you're playing on turn 5, that means on turn 2 you played 2 more 1 costs. So your hand's probably just dumped at that point, and you're probably gonna have to ink her before you get to her. In a world where steel will always be really relevant, a lot of that small stuff's probably dying. I think this is just like a home run play. Like it's like a Hail Mary home run, grand slam, go for the swing for the fences, and most of the time you're gonna whiff.
what is I just thought the Queen card from, was it set 2 that you discard a card and that like you gain that lore in hand?
Yeah, the Queen. A lot of people are trying to figure that one out, and the Emerald super rare. I can't remember she's from set 2, the Disguised Peddler. Yeah, so exert and discard a character's card, gain lore equal to the discarded character's lore. I mean, sure, there's a world, but in what world is Amber Emerald any good? Also, that Queen is 3 cost uninkable.
Amber Emerald, I thought.
I mean, if you're playing Maribel and the Queen, you're playing Amber Emerald.
But I mean, like, Amber Emerald's pretty. Like, there's a version that's good.
Which version have you seen that has been successful?
Under the Sea? Like, no?
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, okay. I'm wrong. It's not on play. Again, we've talked about this. You might play the Queen, and if like this gets, if this were to like pick up any sort of steam, it just dies before it can exert. And not on top of that, you're taking a card out of your hand, and you're, I mean, I don't know. It's not good. I mean, I single-handedly created the D category. At least it's pretty for the Maribel, because it is a pretty card. It's just not any good, unfortunately, in my eyes. I think, unlike if you're wanting a 5-cost quester, you play Belle. You play Aerial Treasure Collector. You play something that's a little bit easier to get into that realm of possibility.
I agree.
Because those you can actually pop off with. Maribel, I don't really see popping off.
I agree.
Okay, so moving on. So for those audio listeners, we have a very big valley between our Amber legendaries, but we got Naveen at S tier meta defining and Maribel at D tier. Hey, at least she's pretty.
There you go. Which that sounds terrible when you say it like that, but
no, I meant the card. You know what I mean. But yeah, so we can move on to Amethyst here, and we've got another Madrigal. So we've got Camillo Madrigal, the 6-cost inkable 3/7 stat line, quests for 1. However, he's got ability that says whenever this character quests, you may gain lore equal to the lore of chosen other character of yours. Return that character to your hand.
So this is like there's obvious synergy with our other card that we just said. Like it goes with, it's supposed to, like, they're trying to make a Madrigal themed deck here.
Potentially. What do you think the best synergy for that ability is? Because I have an idea, but I don't know if it's the best one.
Does it go into Blurple?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible.
Ariel Bell, Tamatoa.
No, because you're thinking too big. Think like Pinocchio. 3 lore, 2 costs. You can play it for cheap. You bounce it back. It's not that big of a deal. If you're playing Tamatoa and bouncing it back, like that's a big expense to get there.
True.
So, in my eyes, it probably has to be something really low cost with a lot of lore. So Daisy Duck. I mean, if we're talking, Amber, Amethyst, which, they're trying to get the Madrigals to work in. Lilo, the, 1 cost Maleficent that also quests for 2. Pinocchio, again, is a 2 cost uninkable that quests for 3. So I think there's some potential, but it's just so expensive. And again, it's a combo card. It doesn't guarantee value. While 7 willpower probably does make sure it lives for a while, the 3 strength is in Medusa range, which I hate saying that. But again, if you're costing 6 and you're in Medusa range, then you're really in Medusa range. I don't know. Is this like niche meta? Like, is there like a chance for it, or is this you just shouldn't play it?
I don't know. I think there's some other cards that would fit that B tier better.
Okay, so we're saying shouldn't play.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're just throwing all these out there. Okay, so moving on to the next Amethyst Legendary, we have Genie, which is another... How many Genie Legendaries do we have? Is this just the second?
I feel like this is the first.
No, because you've got the... Oh, no, that's a super rare. I was thinking of the Amber or Emerald Chapter 1.
Yeah, this is the first one.
Yeah, okay. Genie Main Attraction. He's a 5/5 body, 7 cost, uninkable, quests for 2, and he has this ability that says, while this character is exerted, opposing characters can't ready at the start of their turn. So, super powerful ability. Not going to say that. Just like Maribel, questing for 5 is super powerful. The problem that I see with this is that it's a incredibly big combo piece. And all of the combo pieces that you need to make this pop off are also very expensive and also uninkable. And so to me, that makes it kind of poor. I think the most common line that people have thought through with this is the new Ana that is in Amethyst as well, that says when you play, exert all all opposing characters. And so it even works on Ward because it's not targeting anything. It just exerts everyone. And then you quest with Genie, and then none of them ready. The kicker then is that you have to have the Elsa Snow Queen from Chapter 1 on board, so that the character that they play next turn also gets exerted, because she has the power that says, exert, and then exerts chosen opposing character. And so then you just like kind of, would they play something and you exert it, and they play something and you exert it, and then there's just nothing they can ever do. But that's just a lot of cards to have to combo together. And like have Elsa stay on the board, have Ana and Genie in hand, which both cost 7, which are both uninkable. Like that's a lot to ask for a card to pop off. Again, you're swinging for the fences.
I mean, it's interesting because like control legendaries, like where they're controlling the opponent's board, haven't necessarily seen like. Elsa was huge when she first.
Elsa was massive at first.
And I think we'll get into it later, but I think there is another. We've mentioned it before a little bit, but there's another control legendary that I think has some legs that we'll get into.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, does he have potential? This is like a potential. Like, I don't think as of today you should play him, but I would love to look back at Genie, especially with this art, because maybe I'm going to put Genie in, hey, at least it's pretty, just because it is a really, really pretty card.
It is.
So yeah, he's D tier. He probably should be C tier. But I'm putting him D tier just because it's a really pretty card too. And the foil on it's a really great one. I would love to look back and there's be like a fantastic card. Like there's a chance that I buy some foils of this, like in anticipation that someday this gets insane. I'll just say that.
I mean, a lot of these legendaries have potential to be insane one day.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. So, okay, so that's Amethyst went pretty quick through that one as well. We have Camillo at C, shouldn't play, and we have Genie D. At least he's pretty. So, and I said he's that time on purpose too.
There you go.
Because Genie is really pretty on this one. Okay, so moving on to Emerald. We actually have a lot to talk about on this one.
We do.
So first off, getting into Clarabelle. Not only do we need to talk about Clarabelle because she's the next one on the list, but her single prices are through the roof. People have like insanely jumped on the Clarabelle train these days. She's a 7 cost, inkable, 5/6 stat line, massive body, quests for 2, shifts for 5. So that's insane being able to get her out on turn 5. And her ability says at the end of your turn, so on your turn, there's nothing your opponent can necessarily do about this. If chosen opponent has more cards in their hand than you, you may draw cards until you have the same number. So I've seen this thus far. One of the people, Cody, shout out Cody again if you're listening, was playing this Wednesday at locals with Sapphire, and basically the play was you dump your hand with Tipo and Fishbone Quill and get to 7 really fast or get to 5 really fast shifting, and then you fill it back up. and it was working. Like he was popping off with it for sure. My concern would be that color combo does not have a lot of long-term legs to stand on, and with that, Clarabelle kind of goes with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the shift ability saves her and gives her more of a potential to be good longer term, especially if you are playing like a low resource deck where your opponent isn't. Like if you're playing a low resource deck and your opponent's Ruby Amethyst, then you just shift her in and you say, cool, and now I'm going to, get up to your resource limit. But again, that's a very big combo piece. So yeah, I don't know. Where would you think Clarabelle deserves to go?
So to me, she's the Jafar striking illusionist of the set. I would say. So
I think that's a fair comparison.
just as far as like how hyped she is, at least in the get go here. So it's interesting because like it's very early meta. So is she meta relevant right now?
As of today, she's insanely meta relevant. Longer term, see, that's where I'm getting tricky, because I think you're having the exact same thought process that I am. Is that she's extremely meta relevant today, but I think longer term, throughout the viability of the set, I think she falls off a lot, and so I think she's probably more niche meta.
I feel better putting her at B.
Okay, I'm in the same boat. This is not going well. We're agreeing on everything. People come to us to laugh at our banter and our old married couple interactions.
I mean, there's maybe one we disagree on depending on what your opinion is, but...
Or is it this next one?
No.
Okay. Moving on to the next one, we've got, in Emerald, we've got Ana, the Diplomatic Queen, the 3-cost uninkable, 2/3 stat line, quests for 2, so pretty good body there, or pretty good stats, but her ability says, Royal Resolution, when you play this character, you may pay 2 ink to choose one of the following. Either A, each opponent chooses and discards a card. B, chosen character gets +2 strength this turn. C, banish chosen damaged character. So, go ahead.
I like this card a lot, honestly. Like I'm not saying it's S tier by any means, but I think it's a lot of fun. And I don't know about you, but at least the most useful of the 3 abilities to me would be the banish chosen damaged character.
Yeah, I think it's depending on the deck you're playing. I mean, obviously there's ways to like play, like get it some damage on a character and then make that happen. Let me take a step back real quick. When I initially saw the card, I was like, this is garbage. Mm-hmm. But then I thought about it and I was like, it's basically just a 5-cost character that you have the flexibility to do something that you want. So it's basically a 5-cost character that has 3 abilities that you get to choose from. It's not a 3-cost character that, has another, 2-cost ability attached to it. It's a 5-cost character, essentially.
And I mean, it's got 3 really important abilities of the game. It's got discard, it's got strength boost, and it's got direct removal. So
strength boost is important for some matchups. Discard is important for some of the decks you may build around. The unink ability hurts it in that type of deck for sure. But then banish chosen damage character is obviously important. I think the biggest thing going against this isn't necessarily the pay 2 ink to have to use one of the abilities. It's the unink ability that really hurts this one. If this was inkable, I think this would be like absolute S tier, like no questions asked.
I mean, I think we're in a similar boat. Like,
I'm gonna say it's A tier. I think more times than not when we do these, we're usually putting things too low. I'm fine with putting her A tier and being wrong too high.
Okay. I mean, I was gonna think B here, but no, that's good.
I think we're so early on that people haven't even like really tried to utilize her yet because everybody's just on the Clarabelle hype wagon.
I'll say this. I'll put her in A, as in like, I think maybe you should invest now into her. I think.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine.
She's at like $6-7 right now.
I haven't bought any yet. I've pulled 2. I haven't bought any yet, but if I were in the Emerald realm of like questioning what I want to play, then I would definitely be buying some to make sure I have enough. I think she would have been nutty in last like decks, Emerald Steel. Sure. But anyways, so yeah, I think she's really good. I think she's got a ton of potential. I think there's a reason she's uninkable, because if she was inkable, she would be absolutely busted.
She'd be running rampant.
So yeah, I like her. I like Ana a lot. I think there's a ton of potential longer term, and I think even like short to mid term within this current meta, she's gonna find a place.
I agree.
Okay, so that wraps up Emerald, and we've got the best performance for an ink thus far. We've got Ana again, just what we were just talking about on A tier, meta relevant, and we've got Clarabelle on niche meta usage. Niche meta usage. I mean, I think there's definitely a world where those kind of flip flop within the tiers, like at the end of the set. But as of now, I think that is a very strong result, at least from what I would think. But
I mean, Emerald's coming through again. Like, get the Diablos, get whatever.
Yeah, and again, I think I was talking to Michael about Ana, and he was like, "Yeah, but the three slot is already so congested." But again, it's a 5-cost card.
It's a 5-cost card.
So,
yeah.
But anyways, okay, so yeah, that's where we got those. We'll go ahead and move on to Ruby now and see how the Ruby ones are going. Are these going to be the controversial ones?
Depending on what your opinion is, yes.
Okay, I can say that about you too. Depending on what your opinion is, then it'll be controversial.
Because there's been like some conversation about one of these specifically that.
Yeah.
So
we'll that one's second, luckily too. So we're gonna start off. We're gonna go Donald Duck Pieslinger. We got the 5-cost inkable 3/6 stat line, quests for 1, and has a boatload of abilities. His first ability is Shift 4, which obviously makes him get out a little bit quicker. Even though it's a 5-cost, you don't get him out too much quicker. And then his first ability is Humble Pie. When you play this character, if you use Shift to play him, each opponent loses 2 lore. Fine, it's fine, whatever. There's a few other cards within Ruby that have this type of ability that lose lore. None of them really have a place in the current meta. I wouldn't play him because of that.
Mm-hmm.
There might be other reasons to play him, but that's just like a happy, like, second tier, like, cool. You get that as well. His main ability, I would call it, is Raging Duck. When an opponent has 10 or more lore, this character gets +6 strength to 9 strength. I mean, again, is there a world where this is important to help you, stop locations late game or to trade into anything you ever wanted to? Sure. But that gives him like little to no value early game, especially since you're like, let's say they're at 10 lore and you shift him on and they lose 2 lore and now they're at 8 lore and he lost that part of his ability. I think there's just like a good chunk of the game where he's not relevant. And so I'm going to say you just shouldn't play him.
I agree.
You agree on that one?
Yep. I have very fond memories of this card. Like I'm happy whenever I see it. It's just fun art.
First enchanted of the set we saw.
Yeah. First legendary as well.
Legendary as well. Yeah. I don't see a world where he's any good. In general, I think there's better ways to get that type of strength if that's why you're playing him. And again, the lore loss is probably not the reason to be playing this. If you're like really invested in your opponent losing lore, then just play a Pirate's Life. Sing it for free. Then you gain 2 lore on top of it. So that's my thought, at least. But
yeah, I think I agree.
Okay, so Robin Hood. Moving on to the second Ruby legendary, we've got the 4-cost uninkable Robin Hood Sharpshooter. 1/4 stat line, quests for 2. And his ability says, whenever this character quests, look at the top 4 cards of your deck. You may reveal an action card with 6 cost or less and play it for free. Put the rest in your discard. So I didn't realize that at first. It's usually, you find it, you put it in the bottom of your deck. The fact that it goes to your discard's kind of weird.
I don't like this card at all, to be honest. Like I just don't like it.
I can't decide. Like, I think there's a world where it's like niche meta, but the fact that it's not on play like really hurts it. The fact that you discard the cards that you pulled with the action really hurts it. Like, I know most of the time you're probably not getting to the bottom of your deck, but if you are playing like in a whole new world deck, or you are playing, a like late game control deck and you're in there, chugging through a bunch of their deck and you're just discarding a bunch of your cards. I mean, even if he does quest 3 or 4 times and you're getting, 8 to 10 lore, I mean, that's maybe 4 or 5 times and getting 8 to 10 lore, like you just discarded 20 cards. Like that's a third of your deck to get that 10 lore. And sure, I imagine that you found some actions that dealt with some bodies on board, but who knows what character cards you just discarded too.
I'm not a fan.
I'm fine putting him on shouldn't play. I do think there's a world where he's niche meta usage. I do. I mean, I think there's a world because it is a strong ability. It's one of those kind of like Diablo where if you just sit there letting him quest away, and you're playing with like Dragonfire. I've seen some decks with him with like Bruno as well. So you're playing like Dragonfire, Bruno, Pirate's Life, and you're like pulling those and playing them for free. Like that is a big value. The difference is it's not like Naveen where it's going to happen on play, and you're going to get that value.
But if you play this and your opponent's playing Whole New World, you lose the deck out. Like,
That's what I mean. I think I think it's very niche. I don't think it's good, but I'm totally aligned to putting it on shouldn't play, because I think unless you're some brewmaster, and I know Spessy, shout out Spessy, he's been playing Robin Hood nonstop and loves it. But I'm with you. I don't see a world where the average person should pick this up and play it, because it's just there's a lot of downsides. A lot of downsides.
We do agree on it. Look at that.
Well, we keep agreeing. Okay, so Ruby, one of the worst performers thus far, both in C tier shouldn't play. We've got Donald and Robin Hood. So not ideal for Ruby or legendaries. I kind of feel like that's the theme there though too. You've got Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon, Scar, and Sisu that are both like insane, and then everything else is kind of like meh.
So, I mean, I will say like I think this tier list, if we were to like overall rate these legendaries compared to other legendaries, like they overall rank higher. Like,
probably.
This is within the context of this set.
We don't have a Gantu rank on here, that's for sure.
There's no Gantu rank.
There's no Gantu rank.
There's all like I could see these all having some niche play at some point in time.
Potentially. But moving on to Sapphire here, we've got two fun ones. Starting off with the Merlin Intellectual Visionary, the 6-cost uninkable 3/7 stat line. Stat lines on these legendaries this time are like insane.
They're really well done.
Insane stat lines. Quest for 2, shifts for 5, so he has a Floodborn. And has the ability that says when you play this character, if you shift to play, you may search your deck for any card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So we kind of already talked a little bit about this with Blurple. But if you're playing Merlin, you can play just like a boatload of one-ofs. You can play one of, Dime, if that was the case, if you wanted to do. You can play one of, Let It Go. You can play one of Hades. You can play one of Tamatoa. Probably wouldn't want to do that. One of Mim Dragon. I don't know, a bunch of like closeout cards because you can just find it. You can just shift them in, you can find it, and you can be ready to go. The downside of that, however, is if you're shifting them onto a Blurple Merlin, then you're losing the ability that you're shifting onto of when it leaves play. So, you're not getting the card from the rabbit, you're not getting the lore from the goat. So that's a big downside to think through.
To me, this is a very easy B. Like, I think so.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think there's any way you shouldn't play him, but I also don't think he's meta relevant because I think Blurples has a pretty tough time as is. And to be honest, I think the best Blurple lists right now don't run Merlin. Mm-hmm. So, or this Merlin at least, they run foxes or not fox, they run rabbits and goats. But
I mean, I'm sure someone will find a list.
This one will definitely continue to get better. There's like really powerful cards that you want to be able to play that you don't want to have 4 of in your deck because they're uninkable and they're big bodies or whatever. This really comes into play.
I mean, maybe you go out and find that, that we have a bunch of those new Chernobog type cards. Go out, search for one of those. You have one of in there somewhere.
Yeah.
You bring it out. You bring an Olaf out. You do something like that.
Or a Sheriff of Nottingham that you can play for free because you got enough items on board or something like that.
Yeah.
This is, kind of weird to say, but I actually think he would be a lot better at 7. Like if he was a 7 cost. And why. Oh, come on. Ruby Sapphire. If he was 7 cost, you find your prep, you use your prep, and then you go. Okay. But yeah, so I mean, the most value you get from him is singing, because you find what you want to sing and you sing it and you're good to go. Him not being able to sing prep is a little shoddy, but okay. So moving on to Mufasa, one of my favorites of the set for sure. I think one of most people's favorites for the set for sure. We've got Mufasa, Ruler of Pride Rock, the 8-cost uninkable 4/9 stat line. Again, bonker stat line. Quests for 4, bonker stat line. It has two abilities. When you play this character, exert all ink in your inkwell, then return 2 cards at random from your inkwell to your hand. So unramps you, but gives you card draw. So a little bit of a trade-off there. But that ink loss is definitely offset by a second ability that says when this character quests, ready all cards in your inkwell. So if you go from 8 to 6 ink, you're technically going from 8 to 12 ink because the next turn you're going to get to use all your ink, quest with him, ready back up, use all the ink again.
Yes, but you can only play like 2 6 costs. You can't play 1 like 10 costs.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
so.
But you could, so you've got 6 ink, you ink 1 more time. If you've got Fishbone on board, you ink 2 more times, play your dime, quest, tap dime, play another character, GG.
True. I mean,
I didn't tell you this either. I was playing one of the last games at League. The first week that I had him, you're going to feel really bad for my opponent. I honestly felt really bad too. And I'm not even saying that in like a kind of humble brag way. Like I genuinely was like, damn, this is really hard. I had a Tomato on board. I played a Mufasa and I pulled the 2 ink back. The next turn I inked them both again. I played a Tamatoa. I quested with Mufasa, ready all that 8 ink back up, and I played another Tamatoa. Not even kidding. I had 3 Tamatoas on board on turn 9.
plus Mufasa. GG's? Were they playing Ruby?
No, they were playing Emerald Steel. Damage. The kind of damage deck that we've talked a little bit about. But yeah, so he could not do anything. And I had 4 items on board. I had a quill, 2 pops, and a dime. So that had like, and not even exaggerating, like 25 lore on board.
Yeah,
like
that's insane.
Yeah. So all that to say, when this pops off, it's game over.
So can I bring in my argument?
Yeah.
Like, I think it's a closer to a deck that already has a really good closer. Like Tomato a Dime.
You're right.
It's already such a good closer. I don't think it needs this.
I think a lot of people have that same opinion. I don't think that that's like an outlier opinion. The difference that I think is that, like in Sapphire Steel, where I've really started to hone in on like the No Whole New World list, especially since that's what I qualified with. This is just card draw. Like just look at it as card draw. Sure, you're unramping yourself a little bit, but then you're getting those cards back. And if you want to just ink them again, then just ink them again. And so it's all about ramp and board presence and card draw. And 4 lore guaranteed, especially if you have a dime somewhere, then you're getting 8 lore guaranteed because you're playing the dime, you're questing, you're rating that ink up, and you're tapping it. And so you're getting 8 lore next turn, more or less guaranteed. Like it has to be answered the turn is played. It has to be. One of the, I think it was, I don't remember if it was this episode or last one, but I mentioned I'd played Devin against his blue Fossa and he flipped a Fossa off his Fossa. The next game we played, I held my Let It Go for as long as I possibly could. And he had a Surfer Stitch on board and a bunch of other stuff. And I had to get rid of the Surfer Stitch. I was like, I can't let that on board. He was at like 14 or 16. And I was like, I have nothing to deal with it. I have to get rid of it. I'd used it. Next turn he played Mufasa. And I was like, I knew that was going to happen, but I didn't have a choice. And so my whole point is like, you have to play around it. Tamatoa is obviously incredibly scary as well. But there are times where you only have 1 item on board or you have 0 items on board. That's not scary. This is always scary when it's in play.
I mean, I don't disagree. It's just, I don't know.
I'm fine putting this A tier. Like, I don't think it's like completely and utterly meta-defining busted, but it's insanely good. Like we'll finally have a chance to play some games against each other at some point, and I'll play this and you'll see it and you'll be like, wow, there's just nothing I can do and I lose the game.
I mean, I agree. Like it's just, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just the same things that deal with Tamatoa deal with this, I think.
Yeah, it definitely does. But again,
well,
I don't.
World's Greatest Criminal Mind does it.
Well, yeah, it's right in that like sweet spot. But look at it from the lens of you needing card draw. I know like the ink coming out of the inkwell to me is like not a deterrent in any form or fashion.
Not to me at all. No, I just think it's not necessarily needed.
So what if you need item? What if you need card draw though? You play it, you get 2 cards, you're good to go. Like here, think about it this way too. Like, I know
You're not using that a turn though. You're not playing those cards.
No, I'm not saying you are, but like let's say you have 8 ink, you have him, you don't have anything else to like ink for that turn. You play him, you pull 2 cards, you ink another one. The other, and I know you're not a Sapphire player, so it's not like as relevant in your mind or your thought process, but think about early game when there are things that you don't want to ink because they're really important to your game plan, but you have to ink it because it's either a late game play or like you're tapping something with a dime you don't want to get rid of, or you're tapping something with quill that you don't necessarily want to get rid of. Like, I know that doesn't necessarily like guarantee that you get it back, but the things that you're inking have a lot less relevancy than they did before because it can be regained. So again, I agree. I'm not saying it's completely busted and it's the best card ever and it's like, you know, the most meta defining thing and it's going to completely warp Lorcana. That being said, when it's played, if you don't answer it, you'll lose.
Yeah, I mean it's very true. Just I don't know. I don't dislike the card. I really like it. It's just I hope it does find a spot.
I mean, I'll put it in. Hey, at least it's pretty because it's gorgeous. If
is,
you want me to.
So is the Enchanted.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That was enough on Mufasa. You can report back after we play a couple games and you get Mufasa and see how you feel.
That's the thing. I don't disagree. It's nuts. It's just Diamond Tamatoa is already nuts.
You're right. You're totally right. Okay. So in Sapphire, we have a really good performance from them as well, just like Emerald. We've got Mufasa at A meta relevant and Merlin at B niche meta usage. Okay, so going into the last 2, we've got Steel and we've got Jafar and Arthur. So moving on to Jafar first, we've got the Jafar that we talked about as the card of the week a couple episodes ago, and he's the 6 cost 0/7 stat line with quest for 2. And has Challenger +7, so that's why you have the 0/7 stat line because he's got Challenger +7. But his real ability is opposing characters with 4 costs or less can't challenge. So again, I feel like we kind of covered this one a lot in the last episode. So if you haven't listened to that one, you probably should. But very quickly on this one, he just locks down a board. Him plus Pete give you so much potential to disrupt your opponent's game plan on how they're trying to, deal with your board or close out a game that he really has to be dealt with. And in a world where you're not playing Ruby, what do you do?
I mean, I love this, especially if you're going against, like, let's say you're going against a wide board, right? Like, you've got a Naveen or Ariel, sing grab, take out all that small stuff, and then whatever they bring into challenge probably can't challenge because of this. You pop this up. So,
yep.
I don't know. I think it's being overlooked, or maybe we're not. I don't know.
I think it's overlooked as of currently as well. I think this falls into like the Diablo territory where everybody was like, dies to Brawl, dies to Medusa. But fine, like just throw it out there, it dies, but then they have to spend their entire turn dealing with that than everything else you got on board.
Especially at turn 6 when you've got probably a lot of other stuff in like a Steel Song list.
If you're doing your Steel Song list correctly, then you've probably got 4 other cards on board. At least 3 other cards on board. This
is A+ to me.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is incredibly meta relevant as well. He's not better than Mufasa. Don't fight me on that one.
That's fair. That's fair.
But he's A tier, and depending on the way that the meta goes, just like Mufasa, I could see at some point being S tier.
Also, the inkable is huge, I think.
Oh, he's actually inkable too, which is insane. Okay. Moving on to the last one, we've got again. We're way too. This is way too easy.
I know it's kind of.
This is way too easy. Moving on to the last one, we've got Arthur here, the King Victorious, the 7 cost uninkable, 3/6 stat line, quests for 3. So again, just like nutty stats, nutty stats.
True.
Shifts for 5 and says when you play this character, chosen character gains Challenger +2 and Resist +2, and can challenge ready characters this turn. Usually when I say you're chaining a bunch of and things on, that's bad. In this case, all of those things that you're chaining together are all really good.
True. I mean, this has to see play at some point.
It will. I'm super convinced. Everybody keeps comparing it to Cindy Stouthearted, which again, I get. Like I understand the comparisons. It's a 7 cost. It quests for 3. It's able to give something resist +2. The difference is that for Cindy Stouthearted to pop off, you have to have sung a song, which again, I think in the decks that it's played, like that's not a real hurdle. But you can play this and give that. You don't have to shift it. You can play it and give those abilities to something else to then go kill, to banish. And with the Challenger +2, Resist +2, you're going to be able to challenge way above your ranks. You're going to be able to live through that challenge, and you're going to be able to like create a ton of board pressure. So again, I love this card a ton. I would be incredibly happy to play it. I just, the uninkability and the Steel Song list and like Sapphire Steel is just like sucked up by everything else, and there's just no room for another uninkable.
I think that this will eventually see play, or maybe if this deck arises, I think this is a Ruby Steel Heroes
Challenger deck. Yeah, I agree.
Like, imagine playing this with Heroic Outlaw.
I agree.
Like,
I don't know where you're getting that 14 ink and the cards to. You mean Heroic Outlaw is already on board?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and you put this on it. It's a Resist +2 Heroic Outlaw, challenge ready cards.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And I've said a million times, Heroic Outlaw is one of my favorite, if not my most favorite card of the game. And that would definitely make it pop off. I can't put it any lower than like niche meta.
No, I think like, imagine like you've got a fill on board, right? Like you get that insane unplayability that Arthur already has, then you gain like, I think it sees play in Ruby Steel. I think it's where it sees play.
Yeah, I mean, again, you have to have that be some sort of a meta deck and get enough card draw to.
And I think it will at some point. Maybe not the set.
Yeah,
but
it's possible. But anyways, yeah. So I think that covers it. Arthur is like my hidden gem that at some point is going to be nutty, because I think of all these cards that could have the most Naveen obviously with minus Naveen has the ability to like swing a game, because those little cards that you're trying to protect, your Cogsworths. I mean, of course, first thing that comes to mind is Bucky. Bucky's gone, but Prince John, all of those warded characters that just sit there and are menaces for you to deal with. The Muses in your Lemon Lime decks, all of those cards just get dealt with by this. All of them.
We agree that that's the biggest part of this ability, right? Is the
challenge ready characters. Yeah.
I mean, Muses, getting to deal with Muses is a huge thing, because they didn't really have an answer.
No, I mean, aside from Sisu and Prep, they still really don't have an answer.
True.
I think the +2 Challenger is also important, because not a ton of things have 4 strength, and so you just go in, you challenge with anything dinky, and banish whatever it is that you're trying to challenge into, if it's the Muses or not. But yeah, I think again at some point there's an opportunity for him to be insane.
I think so too. I mean,
okay. Yeah, I can't believe how much we agreed on actually everything, pretty much.
It's weird. But I really like the set of legendaries. I really do.
Yeah, I do too. I think that this is one of the better sets of legendaries that we've seen in a long time, for sure. I mean, last set we obviously had Diablo, which was insane, and before that we had Dime, which was again insane. But I think in general, like the overall feel for like the entire legendary set has been mediocre, and this one seems like it could be really, really strong.
I think I would say this probably goes with set 3 in terms of like strongest overall legendaries.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, quick wrap up, and then we'll finish this one out. We've got Naveen, S tier meta defining, and A tier meta relevant. We've got Mufasa, Jafar, and Anna, and B tier niche meta usage. We've got Clarabelle, Merlin, and Arthur. Merlin and Arthur right there together.
Nice.
And C tier shouldn't play. You've got Donald, Robin Hood, and Camillo. And then hey, at least they're pretty. We've got Genie and Maribel.
And again, I think even like Maribel and Genie have a shot at being played at some point. So like,
I think you're stretching those two. I
understand, but like I think these cards could all see eventual play.
What about Mickey Mouse Trumpeter? Was that going to see play?
No, these cards.
I mean, I don't know. I think we've said that before is the only point I'm trying to make. But anyways, yeah, no, that was a fun one. So any other final thoughts on the legendaries this set?
I mean, I thought for sure we were going to have another S. Like, that's the weird thing. Like, I thought we were going to have another S.
I think Naveen, he's head and shoulders above the rest. I think it makes sense.
I agree.
Okay. Well, that covers this one. So as always, everyone, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And if you're on Spotify or YouTube, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, guys.